check for $782 from the state of Colorado today. Never expected that. $78.20.
Should I use my wireless? You good?
They're both okay now.
They're both okay
I'll
now.
switch frequencies.
You can't be here and not be okay. So thank you for all of your sharing. I remember that story, Terry, about the 11th hour, literally. Where is Terry? The 11th hour of someone coming in and buying your business the day before you were going to close it down, and how that's morphed into greater and greater good. So thank you for being willing to stand in the flow of prosperity and abundance, because it doesn't just happen. You really do have to shift your energy to be able to accept that. And before we get into more of tonight's class, I just want to do a little housekeeping. There is no class next Monday night. There's nothing going on here. If you come, it will be dark. The doors will be locked because Nancy will have been long gone. And you can, talk amongst yourselves in the parking lot or the picnic tables if you want to. But there's no class next Monday. My fall class starts the week after that. And if you haven't kind of gotten the gist of it, I have abandoned all of the structured classes because I've had it up to here being told what to do and what to teach. And so my class for who knows how long, it has a beginning date and not an end date, because I figure we'll end it when we get it. And when we've really used, incorporated it into our lives. It's called The Art of Shifting Consciousness and Changing Your World.
Yay.
Woohoo! So we're going to focus on what is consciousness, what is our consciousness, and how do we shift that, and it is an art. Because you've got to be willing to let go of the triggers and let go of the limiting thoughts and let go of the feelings that you don't deserve it and stand full-orbed in life's glory and beauty, and then that shows up as your life. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I just wanted to bring you up to speed on what was happening structurally. So we have a couple of chapters that we're going to do tonight to finish up the night. And I get to talk about the mystery of sex transmutation. And now what that sounds to me on the start is about, Kundalini Yoga, where you generate sexual energy, but you don't take it all the way to the end and you bring it up your spine and release it beautifully and wonderfully out your crown chakra. That's not what it is. Although I've done that and it's really cool. What he's talking about, and what he's talking about in most of this book, is don't be stupid. Really, that kind of boils down to it. Don't be stupid and do this. And if you do that and don't not do that, then your life is going to work better and better and better. So what he's talking about is don't let your desire for sex make you do stupid things. And I don't know about you, but I've gone down that road. I've gone down that road where I, threw caution to the wind and was there for, what is the psychological term? Instantaneous gratification instead of long-term gratification, which is, well, how is my life going to work tomorrow? And so he's saying don't do that. And here's a little quote from him that I just love. Where is it? He says that here it is, page 280. A sex-mad man, could be a woman, a sex-mad woman is not essentially different than a dope-mad woman. Both have lost control over their faculties of reason and willpower. Sexual overindulgence may not only destroy reason and willpower, but it may also lead to either temporary or permanent insanity. Now, don't get me wrong here. I am not going into a moral teaching, and I absolutely believe that sex is good. If you're not having sex, have some. Just don't be stupid about it. And what he says is that when you elevate that energy, into an experience of love, that it will transmute your life. It will change your life. And so he is a big proponent of he calls it the emotion of sex, but he wants you to blend it with the emotion of love. And when you do that, your world changes. And having been down both those roads, I tell you, putting a little love in there really helps. It helps the next day, and the next day, and the next day. So if you're having love without sex, you may want to add the sex. If you're having sex without love, you may want to add the love. And you know, you can love anybody on this planet. All you have to do is open up your heart and allow that love energy to come through. And he also talks about the 7 major positive emotions in the subconscious mind chapter. And he talks about the emotion of desire, which is what we spoke about on the second night of class, the first night that was a teaching class, where we wrote out our desire for a certain amount of money and what we were willing to do for that, and how you know, at what time we were willing to accept that. A number of us put now, and how we were willing to be to have that. So he said that major positive emotions are desire, whether it's a desire for money, whether it's a desire for connection, whether it's a desire for a pair of shoes, whatever it is, desire, day of sire, father, of the Father. God is whispering in your ear, have this. We don't have it, so we desire it. That's a good thing. He's also talking about the emotion of faith. To step out on faith, to have a little faith in life. Everything really is going to work out. Everything really is okay. He talks about the emotion of love, the emotion of sex, the emotion of enthusiasm. Enthusiasm in theos, in spirit. Be enthusiastic. Let the Spirit move you. Get happy. Get excited. He talks about the emotion of romance and the emotion of hope. Those are positive emotions. And those are feelings that we want to cultivate in our lives. And I like the idea of taking hope into expectation, but when you're in despair, hope is a real step up. When you can see that something else can happen other than what's happening in your life right now, that's a real positive step. Even if it hasn't manifested yet, if you can see that in the future, things are going to work out. It is a step up in consciousness, a step up in vibration. And then he talks about the major negative emotions, which goes back to your first night in class of how to outwit fear. He talks about fear, jealousy, hatred, revenge, greed, superstition, and anger. Those are bad. You don't want to do those. In the world of right and wrong and good or bad, those are bad. You know, it's a real waste of energy to be angry. And yes, you have a right to your anger. Yes, you can defend that, but you're just wasting energy. For you to move into fear, for you to move into jealousy. I mean, what is jealousy but a fear that there's not enough, that somebody's got something that you want, and you think that because they have it, you don't have it. And so you're jealous of them. That comes from a basic sense that there's not enough, that there's a lack in the universe. Hatred. What a waste. We would kill each other over that. Revenge. Really? You want to plot on how you're going to hurt someone else? That's what the whole forgiveness night was about. Because not forgiving is like drinking poison expecting the other person to die. So when you hang on to revenge, you are poisoning yourself with every thought of ill that you're focusing on someone else. And greed comes from an idea that there's not enough. Superstition comes from a lack of understanding the law. And anger is just a temper tantrum. And you don't need to do that. You can channel that energy in a much higher way and have a lot more working in your life. So he does a lot of talk about the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind being the connector between he calls it our finite mind and infinite mind. And in the Science of Mind teaching symbol, I'll just give you a little bit up right here. We have conscious thought, subjective, mind, and form. Just call it form. So he's saying that the subconscious mind is our connection with infinite mind. And so we have our connection with infinite mind, and you can call it, we'll just call infinite mind right here, where we have our conscious and subjective coming together. And what happens when we connect to that, we have form. We have things show up in our lives. So if we use our subconscious mind directed by our conscious mind to say, I know that I have more than enough. I know that life is good. I know that I am blessed. Blessed. I bark I know that God is the source of all supply and money is God in action, and I have my good now. If I use my conscious mind to direct my subjective mind, I'm reaching out and touching the infinite. I'm grabbing hold of spiritual law. I'm setting the creative process in motion, and the only thing that can come of that is form in my life. So this was new when Napoleon wrote this. This was a whole new idea that said we can through our own persistence and diligence and sometimes stubbornness of not being willing to give in to the world of effects, but to stay on what we want, we can direct infinite mind, the creative power of all of life, to the form that we want to experience. And we do it by consciously directing, impressing that on our subconscious mind, and he says that's the doorway to the infinite, which is the creative force. So this was brand new stuff when he wrote it, and people have taken that and used it and used it and used it for decades and decades, and used it to the point where people say, well, of course, this is the normal way. You know, psych yourself up. Why did we lose the football game? We couldn't wrap our heads around it. If you have 99 no's, the 100th one is going to be a yes. All of that has permeated our culture to the point where we take it as just normal experience. But it started with pioneers like Napoleon Hill many, many years ago in his ideas of this is how people go from rags to riches, from sorrow to happiness, from aloneness to connectedness. They do it by insisting that they direct their subconscious mind and set the direction. So those are my chapters. Want my mic?
Hold on.
Your book.
Now you're doing good.
Hi.
Good job. We're finishing the book tonight, could you tell? So that was chapters 11 and 12. Now we're going to look at 13. 13 is about the brain. This guy's amazing. In 1938, this was cutting edge stuff that transformed the world, truly. However, on brain technology, he could only go as far as he could go in 1938. There's been a lot discovered since then. Let's see. Some of my favorite stuff came from this guy. I met Bruce Lipton over at the Unity Church when it was on Airport Road. He was kind of a wandering microbiologist. He kind of lost his connection to the academic world, and he was going around talking in centers that would listen to him. He wasn't well known, but now he's world famous. But at the time, I sat in the sanctuary down there on Airport Road and listened to this guy, and just went crazy with what he taught us that day. It changed everything. Because what it did was it brought directly the idea of science together with metaphysics for me. Most purely that I never heard. He was trained actually in Virginia, and then went up to somewhere in the Midwest, I think to the University of Minnesota, in Minneapolis, and worked with people that had won Nobel Prizes in science, different sciences. But he had this thing that was going on that changed everything in the way he looked at it. And this is what it was. He was a cellular biologist. So he worked with cells. So let's let this be a cell. Okay? Do you know how many of those are in the human body? About 50 trillion in a human body. That's a community. So, classic cellular biology says that a cell has a nucleus, and the nucleus contains these strands of DNA. And that the nucleus is the brain of the cell. Well, he kept looking at that and going, this isn't making sense. Because as you study the cell, and things happen to the cell, the nucleus doesn't seem to be doing much. So he took this to some of those Nobel laureates and said, I don't think the consciousness of the cell dwells in the nucleus. I think it dwells on the surface of the cell. And they said, well, that's just wrong. He said, why? He said, because it's always been the other way. That's not a good enough reason. So his research shows the nucleus of the cell contains the DNA, that's true, and the DNA is the blueprint of the entire structure of whatever that cell is contained in. Not just that cell, but every other cell that's involved in that organism. All of that data is in that DNA. It's all there. It's all patterned right, and if something breaks in the body, the cell goes to that information to rebuild itself. So it's important information. But it's not the driver in the cell. That the actual surface of the cell is what does the work. And what's on the surface are two things. There's little crystals on the surface of the cell. And there's portals. There's portals that can open and close. Why is that? Well, because the way the cell is structured is it is relating to its environment. That's all it knows, is the ability to relate to its environment. So if there's something going on in the environment that the cell wants to study, it'll open up one of these portals and let a little something in. And it will compare that comes in to the information it has here. So if this they can't find here, then it's poison. And they will spit it out and not let any more of it in. They're wanting to let food in. They're wanting to let nutrition in all the time. But if it's not food and not useful and they can't find that they've ever experienced it before, they'll have nothing to do with it. That's how the cell works. Now what are these little crystals about? Well, the little crystals are antennae. And what they receive is information through a frequency. And what Lipton's research shows is that every one of us, if we have 50 trillion cells, have an unmeasurable number of these antennae, these crystals on surfaces of our cells that receive information via this frequency. We each have our own frequency. He's determined that within the first few minutes of life, your body and every crystal antenna on every cell in your body, in your being newly born, suddenly goes into alignment around a frequency that only your body has. Fascinating stuff. Now you extrapolate this from just a single cell to a human being. Let's see if we can get something that kind of looks human. Okay. Inside of that human head is a brain. That's what the conversation in the book is about, this brain thing. So, as you know, there are many different parts of the brain. There's well, I actually wrote them down, so let me make sure I give them to you. The big ones are the cerebral cortex, which is this larger part, but then there's other stuff. Down here, there's the pituitary gland and the cerebellum, and the thalamus sits up in here, and then there's this thing called the hypothalamus. Interestingly, the hypothalamus has more crystal antennae than any other part of the body. Perhaps that's because it's the receiver in the brain. It's receiving data. Now the thing about this that makes this so metaphysical is, where's it receiving data from? Nobody knows. We haven't been able to crack the code on how that works yet. But it's receiving information from somewhere. from something, and it's probably non-physical. So it's receiving something that is non-physical. It's receiving information. Ooh, what does that mean? Well, every time you hear us say around here, you're not your body. That's what we're saying, is that from something else in the universe, you are transmitting information to and from your body. Something that may be in a dimension right next to you or inside you, but it's not physical and it's not here. You can't find it. So that this body of yours, this thing that you're working with, is receiving information and giving that information all the time to something non-physical. So is every cell in your body. Go back to the cell. So the cell does this thing where it opens its portals and gets information, but it's also relating here. So, every time your cell is receiving and giving information, it's dealing with two different dimensions, one here and one here. So, if you're saying, if there's some element in your body that's poisoning you, you can actually think your cell's healthy. Because every cell is receiving the thoughts, the consciousness of you, not your body, you, and changing your physical makeup. Now, if you get a contrary thing between the actual environmental information the cell is getting and the information you're getting, it's going to have to work it out, what it's going to receive and what it's going to work from. But this is good news, because if you keep telling your body it's healthy, your cells, all 50 trillion of them, will listen to you. When a practitioner believes that every cell in your body is healthy, and actually Hill goes into this, if that practitioner believes that every cell in your body is functioning the way it was designed to function, and it is functioning in a healthy manner, then every cell in your body will hear that and know that, will receive that information, and it will act upon it. And it will get rid of the toxins and poisons and things that aren't working. We've seen this over and over and over again, where when someone can know themselves back to health, you can have a tumor, a cancerous tumor, that is going to take your body and destroy it one day, and the next day it's not there. And that's because of a change in consciousness, a change in thought. The brain is a tool. It is not the place where your consciousness lies. Barbara and I watched that movie Transcendence the other night. That's not how it works. If you watch that movie, probes in a brain collecting data is not consciousness. Consciousness is happening outside of your body. It's happening in a non-physical way. But that you are, your consciousness is focused on your body and telling your body what is so. You are the one that is that consciousness. Now, you can be influenced by race consciousness, which means the consciousness of human beings on planet Earth. If you buy into something being so, Lipton says that they cannot determine anything past 5% of illnesses being in any way related to heredity. And that he's even questioning that. He's saying all this stuff about what kind of illnesses did your parents have? Well, if you believe that influences you, it does. Otherwise, it doesn't. If you say, I don't care what illnesses my parents and my cousins and my siblings had, I'm fine, I'm healthy, then you're healthy. That's the truth, that's how it works. But when you buy into that because they had some illness, you're likely going to have it? Well, yes, you are. And you're telling every cell in your body that's so. And it will respond in kind. Lipton calls cancer a rebellion of cells in your body against the leadership. Yeah. So watch out what you think. There are no victims to physical conditions. And I'm not saying that any physical conditions are wrong. If everything is God, then everything is a spiritual experience, including cancer, including heart disease, including everything else. They're spiritual experiences. They're not wrong. But you get to choose. What do you want to have? What do you want to have? You get to choose. You get to choose what you want to experience. 50 trillion cells. Isn't that amazing? If you want to read about this, Lipton's book is The Biology of Belief. Okay, chapter 14. Oh, because I'm out of time. That's called The Sixth Sense. He called it the door to the temple of wisdom, through which infinite intelligence communicates with us. There is an infinite intelligence. We bask in it. We live in it. We don't have a relationship with it. It is who we are. We have access to all the information that has ever been known or has not yet been known. We have access to all of it. We limit ourselves because we live in this physical universe and we buy into this idea that it's this way, that there are these limitations and that we can only do certain things. But when we get outside of those limited parameters, we can create anything. And I know you hear that all the time. You can do anything. Well, frankly, you can, but you won't because you're buying into this physical form that you are. You think your body is who you are. It's not. You're something greater than that. So how can you, I'm not asking you to change the world. I'm not suggesting anybody in this room needs to change the world. But read chapter 14 and what he says about his counsel and the people that Hill spent his time with. It's quite amazing. His relationship with Abraham Lincoln, with Thomas Edison, and with a whole batch, with Emerson and other people is quite amazing. The idea is that you have an ability to create a knowledge base of your choosing from whomever and whatever you want. Jose Silva, the Silva method, he used to teach that he would go to bed at night with a question on his mind. And thinking of that question, he would drink half a glass of water. He would set the glass of water down on his nightstand. He would go to sleep. He would get up in the morning, and the answer to his question would be there as he was drinking the other half of the glass of water. Now that was his little way of doing it. And what I want you to know is that if you go to sleep at night with a thought in your mind, an unanswered question or a topic that isn't totally resolved, you will have an answer first thing in the morning. If you set that up in mind to receive that, to have that, you can do that. You can get any answer to anything you want. I've had so much information come to me as I'm waking up in the morning. And scientists suggest that the reason that happens is that your daily thoughts aren't in your way at that moment as you're coming back into your conscious awareness of your body. That you're still free enough to let information flow easily to you. It's a perfect time to collect information. So I keep a pad by the bed so that when it comes to me as I'm waking up, I can write it down. I really recommend you do that, because what that is that's your imaginal body telling you what it is that you can do. You, at that moment of waking up, you're free enough to know what you can know and to receive what you can receive in that moment that will help you in your day, in your life, and what's going on. It's amazing. It's imagination, absolutely, but imagination isn't just made up stuff. There's any possibility dwells in the mind of God. So if you can imagine it, it can be so. The first step of any creation is a thought. The first thing that's created is a thought, and it's a creation. Many people say, well, the thought is at the top of the circle with the lines. It's in the top. Okay, that's fine, but it's still a creation. You created a thought. And if you've created a thought, then that thought can be something in physical form. It's not, a thought isn't physical form. They still don't know what a thought is. At least science doesn't. But the truth is that thought, if you've created that thought or had that thought to begin with, you can turn that thought into something physically present for everyone to see. Everything starts with a thought. Every city, every invention, every institution started with a thought. So what are you thinking? What are you thinking? What are you doing with your life? Napoleon Hill's given a great gift. 1938 it was published. 1938. We're in 2014. And still, there's magical information there for us. So pay attention to your thoughts. Pay attention to how you're living your life. And you can change anything, and create anything you put your mind on. And I want you to know, sir, we're going to watch you become an incredibly successful man that the whole world knows. I see that in you. I see that in you. It's time for a break.
And if you do a Google search, in other words, do a search like Google, because that's just what, that's all I'm doing.
Hey, Barbara.